Hi, and welcome to a short yin practice that is really kind of capturing the feeling and essence of winter, which is just a very inward time. And in traditional Chinese medicine, the kidneys are associated with the season of winter and also the water element. So we'll focus a lot on the kidney meridian, which actually begins at the tip of the pinky toe and runs all the way up. It ends at the root of the tongue. And on its way, ascending up the body, it actually goes into the organs of the kidneys and the urinary bladder. So we'll focus on that line. So to begin, take your feet and just marry the soles of the feet together. So if this is uncomfortable to start, take your feet further away from you and create more of a diamond shape. And you can let the hands kind of rest, like wrap your hands over the tops of the feet. Put your thumbs on the inner borders of the feet. If you take a line, draw a line between the first and second toe, come over the padding here on the ball of the foot. Right underneath there is K1, so kidney 1. It's called gushing spring. So you can have your feet a little bit further away or a little bit closer together. And just take a few moments. I like to use my thumb and press into that point. Soften your shoulders out of the ears. You can let the chin slightly rest down, and you can just apply a steady pressure, or you can kind of press in and circle around, maybe more of an up and down movement. And when you're here, start to cultivate just a smooth, deep breath in and out. Just a few breaths here, pressing into that kidney 1 point. So you can rub here anytime you'd like. It's really stimulating for the kidney. Okay, and release. So if you had the feet in the diamond shape, stay, or again, feet together. You can put your hands behind you and arch for a moment. When you're ready, come on down. Let's relax the head and neck. If you're using blocks, you could put forearms to blocks. Give yourself a few moments to really begin to feel into where the most sensation is in the body. Sometimes it's nice to visualize a direct connection from the nostrils right to the kidneys. And they're in the low back, kind of right between the bottom of the rib cage and the top of the hips. They sit on either side of the spine. So see if you can have that direct connection, breathing in from the nostrils right down into the kidneys. And let your breath and belly really extend with the inhale. And so much so that you don't just breathe forward, but you breathe into the back of the abdomen. Traditional Chinese medicine would say, breathe down into the rightful abode of the kidneys, right? So the home where they reside in the body. We'll take a few more moments here. You might feel like you're in relative stillness, but let the posture still feel alive. The longer you're here, you can start to feel how the posture also enlivens different areas where we kind of stretch and compress. You might feel this with the most sensation in the low back. You might feel it in the outer hips. You might even feel it in the inner thighs. We'll take one more breath here together. And then slowly bring one hand at a time to the front of the ankles. And we'll just take the counter. So just arch your back and lift the chest and let the shoulders come down away from the ears and press them slightly back so the chest can go forward. Good, and then release. And then we'll just take this posture and kind of like split it in half. So stretch your right leg forward and take your left foot along the inner thigh. And if you're using a blanket, if your hamstrings are pretty tight, you can put that rolled up blanket underneath the thigh or knee. And if you'd like, blocks are a really nice accompaniment to this practice. So you can start pretty tall. Sometimes I like to just gauge what Tadasana would feel like, or like a nice straight spine. And then begin to hinge a little bit. And then just kind of let yourself go. So you can let the forearms rest, medium, low blocks. And sometimes it takes like a little bit of rearranging, especially if you're here for a nice length of time, the body will start to relax deeper into the posture. So then you can move your blocks accordingly to relax with that. And so with the right leg forward and the left knee bent, you're receiving a lot of opening through the back body and pretty much directly in the back left kidney. So see if you can really bring the mind's eye there. And the kidneys house our jing, or our essence. And we're said to have prenatal jing. So in the womb, we are receiving a certain amount of jing or essence that we bring with us into this lifetime. And we can deplete it, or we can do our best to really ensure that the kidney jing stays healthy and vibrant and flows through the body. As you breathe, you might even make the breath bigger. And by that, I mean just really fuller and deeper. So the full capacity of the lungs begins to work for you. And then you might feel the reception of the low back as you breathe. But let's take one more breath here. And then on an inhale, begin to come on up. So this is a little bit more of a yin express, not really holding the postures as long as we traditionally would. Go ahead and switch sides and let that left leg be long. And you can have that foot along the inner thigh, or you could let it rest closer to the knee. And take a moment and feel the counter. So it's almost as if we're in a back bend here. Feel some of that aspect of the chest moving forward. And then hinge. And position your blocks so that you can fold forward. So you're choosing the height of the blocks and how far forward towards the foot they go. And this is like a time-honored position to place the body in. So you don't have to work towards your edge right away. It's really like over several breaths and several moments and even several minutes in the posture that things begin to open up more in the fascia, the connective tissue, deeper into the joints, the tendons, all the way down to the bone. You can let your body find those still points. And though the posture may not be full of movement like a traditional vinyasa, when the body's still, you can feel the movement of the breath within. You might feel that stretch along the bottom half of the low back. So breathing into the right kidney.
Okay, breathing low into the rightful abode. Good. On your next inhale, you might first just simply begin to lift the head and reach the breastbone forward as you rise up.
Okay, so stretching both legs forward. So from here, especially if your hamstrings feel pretty tight, you can take a blanket and place it underneath the knees. So usually I'll just kind of shift a little bit right and left. A couple ways to approach this. You can start like pretty tall and put tall blocks next to you. Let your forearms rest and just let the chin drop. So this is intense stretch of the west. So theoretically, we stretch the whole back body. So you might feel it more upper body if you're higher. And if you're coming a little bit lower, you might start to feel more like mid back, hamstring, all the way down to the calves. So, use your blocks to elevate the floor, right? So to lift the floor up to you, whether it's for arms, legs, etc. You can also just let them go entirely. So we're starting with a series of forward folds, which are very introspective. It's very yin of yin, right? All yin postures really kind of lead us in, but forward folds especially, which is so complementary to the season of winter. Traditional Chinese medicine, winter is associated with the kidneys, with the water element, with the cold. Winter is associated, and kidneys especially, with a dark or even a black color. Also the element of fear, or the emotion of fear. Sometimes we fear the unknown. And when we hold these postures, we become in essence like one with ourselves. And we can go deeper in. Right, winter is that season that strips away. If you think of a tree that's bare, its essence is stripped away. And the feel of the season really invites us to do the same thing. Good. On an inhale, come on up, roll your shoulders open and back. And then come on down, take your time. So I'm just going to offer up the use of a strap. So if you have one, great. If not, you don't really need it, but it's an option. Good, so come on down. If you have a blanket, you can use your blanket as a little pillow. Good, if you have a block, go ahead and walk your feet a little bit closer to you, lift your hips, and the block goes under your sacrum. So it's that bony, it's like a triangular bone between the hips. So make sure it doesn't go like on any soft spot in the low back. If you don't have a block, don't worry, this works just as well without. So keep your left foot planted and go ahead and draw the right knee in towards you. And so just remind yourself to really release the shoulders out and away from the ears. The ears are also organs associated with the kidneys. They kind of resemble the kidneys in shape. Even though we're getting the compression here on the right side of the abdomen, what we're kind of looking for, just because we're specifically working on the kidney line, we're looking for a little bit of elongation in the low back, right on the left side. Good. Release that kind of feeling of hugging in and take that right leg and
stretch it a little more towards straight. So I want you to flex your foot and press the thigh into the hands and kind of press that leg away. So now for just a moment, we kind of segue to that right side, kind of elongating through the right low back. Good, rebend the knee, hug it in. Put that foot on the floor. And then you can lift your hips, kind of realign, make sure the block is in just the right spot, and hug both knees in. And the block is kind of nice here, will help you kind of bring the legs closer to you. I'm just gonna, it's not a full-fledged rock, it's just like this little baby shift side to side here. Hopefully that feels kind of nice to do that. Just a couple more moments here, just a little shift. Good, and then release and put your right foot down and hug your left leg in. And so, you might feel this in a couple places. You might also just feel the elongation from the hip crease to the knee on the right side. Good. Stretch your left leg straight, put the hands behind, interlace them, and just press that left leg away. So it's almost like a clearing here in the low back. So press away. Good. Rebend and hug both legs in. And then for just a moment, stretch your arms long and stretch your legs up. So I just have to shift my hips up a little bit, kind of move the block back. You can put your hands like on your low belly. So if your knees are bent and you feel like it's a struggle to keep the legs up, just put one foot down, okay? And we'll do one leg at a time here. You'll receive so much more in that way. So I'll give you a moment, I'll tell you when to switch. So either both legs or start with one leg. And so again, the kidney line runs from the pinky toe all the way up into the kidneys and then to the root of the tongue. So here, just think about like the flow of fluid in the body, and just allow that reversal. So from the toes to the kidneys, let that fluid kind of drain from the legs. And as you breathe in, let the belly really extend out. So much so we self-edit. So we don't let the belly really balloon and blossom, but let that happen here. Breathing into the back of the abdomen as well. Good, so switch legs. If you've got one leg up, switch. So now you're putting the opposite foot on the floor, the opposite leg lifts. This is such a highly restorative place for the body. I'll take just a few more breaths. And so again, if you're not using a block, no worries. It works just as well with and without. So if you were doing the one leg version, send both legs up, and we're going to get the kidney line as it runs along the inner thighs. So start to let your legs come wide. You can take your hands, and wherever they land, you can let them rest along the inner legs. I like to flex my feet here. I usually kind of like, you don't really want to be on anywhere in the soft spot in the knees. So either more calves or a little bit more upper thighs. You can let the hands rest for that little bit of aid from gravity. So many times I do that little check-in to just release the shoulders out and away from the ears. All right, release the upper arms to the floor. So take your hands to the legs and just press them back towards each other. Bend your knees. Give them a little squeeze. I usually cross one ankle over the other. And then release. Okay, if you're on your block, come on off. So here's where you can grab your strap. So I'll show you with a strap, and then I really prefer without. So we're going to hug the right leg in, and then flex your foot and kind of like lift your foot towards the ceiling. And then we're just going to let that leg fall open to the side. So we're coming into a half happy baby. So you can lasso the foot right around the ball of the foot. Even think about that gushing spring, the kidney one, the strap kind of presses there. The leg comes way out to the side, and you can use your hands to help guide that thigh and knee down onto your left knee bent, your left foot on the floor. So feel free to keep your hands on the strap. I prefer either just one hand on my foot, or I like the version with two. And let yourself rock a little bit, right? So the right thigh is on the floor. We're just kind of you might feel a whole lot here in the low back. We're just creating space there for the left kidney. And kidney, again, associated with the different flavors. It's associated with a salty flavor in the direction of north. I love the way traditional Chinese medicine will kind of bring the different organs of the body to life. Good. Just take a few more moments, just kind of lengthening, creating space through the left low back. There's also some compression and pressure on the right kidney here as we have this hip opener. Good. Release. And then just take your right leg and cross it over your left. Like rock your hips a little bit. You can feel free to take your arms to the side. So what I'm doing, so with the right leg crossed over your left, I want you to press into your left foot, let your hips lift, and then it's like your right hip lifts and your left hip drops. And then let the left hip come back to the floor and take your twist. If your right leg doesn't like very easily come to a resting point somewhere, let it rest on a block. You can even take your right hand for just a moment. You don't have to leave it there, but just feel around that area of the low back. And just note that this is kind of where we want to direct our attention. So I like to let my right hand rest on the rib cage here. You can let the chin drop to the shoulder. And as you breathe, see if you can just kind of direct the breath from the nostrils to the kidney. You could even go as far as thinking right nostril, right kidney. Good. Take one more breath. And then slowly come on back, plant your left foot, lift, realign your hips, and go ahead and keep the legs crossed like this, like a reclined cow face. And you could just like put hands to knees and hug in just to kind of get some of the outer hips and thighs there. Or you can take the hands and really slide them down towards the ankles and hug in. Just really getting into the side seam of the legs. Good, go ahead and release. And for just a moment, we'll kind of Supta Baddha Konasana. So marry the feet together again, let the legs go wide. And sometimes it feels good to clasp opposite elbows, arms overhead, so we get a little more opening through the chest. Can you let the root of the tongue be heavy? Let the whole body fill with breath. Good, one more. And then slowly stand the feet back up. And we'll come into that half happy baby left side. So you can start by hugging the left leg in. If you're using your strap, it goes around the ball of the foot. Think again of that like kidney one line there in the sole of the foot. You could take both ends of the strap in your left hand, use your right hand to kind of anchor your right hip like it's in your pocket, or just dive right into both hands on the foot. And let yourself, it's not like we're shifting to the left, but let a little bit of your weight go there. So you can use the floor for feedback. If the thigh's on the floor and your foot's flexed, your hands are on your foot, there's a lot of different feedback loops here. Shoulders out of ears. Just kind of clearing that right side of the low back. We're also getting the compression on the left kidney. Good. Go ahead and release. And take your left leg. Sometimes I'll like open and close a little bit just so I feel super comfortable when I do cross that left leg over. Now your right foot's down, lift your hips. And it's like we shift, but really left hip lifts up, right hip drops down, and then come into the twist. So I can show you a little bit better on this side. If your leg doesn't come to the floor, let it rest on a block or maybe a blanket. Or if you have a pillow close by, you can let your chin drop to your shoulder. Take a few moments and you can actually kind of like feel into that area of the sacrum, and over time you can kind of feel some of that connective tissue just kind of easing its way, kind of softening and opening through the whole low back area. You can even kind of soften and release a little bit into the abdomen, the lower belly. Take one more moment here. And then nice and slowly come back. You just kind of keep the legs crossed for a moment, plant that foot, realign your hips. And so we're going to hug in again with that reclined cow face. You can create like a little space between the legs first and then kind of redo that crossing. You do your hands like right below the knees, or maybe your hands kind of slide down. So it's okay if your heels start to kind of dip towards you. You can also bring them up a little bit more so the shins are kind of like parallel to the floor. I found I was like tilting a little bit left. I just like realign. So, just note sometimes your body will default to those places. Good. Release, undo. Let's take just like a version of a happy baby. I just want you to take your hands on the shins and hug it really wide. Keep your tailbone down. Good. And then if you want to come into the full posture, come on in. Again, try to keep your tailbone low to the earth. All right, release. So we're just going to roll. I'm not going to be mirroring you here. I'm rolling to my right side. So we're going to come into a side hammock. If you have any wrist issues, you can just bring form to the floor. Also, you can put your blanket underneath your hip if you want. I'm just going to scoot my hands underneath here. So knees bent. I want you to feel like we're super slouchy along the whole right side of the body. Some people feel really good letting like ear and shoulder meet. I like to just keep my head and neck pretty neutral and then drop my chin. I'm just thinking about the space you're creating here in the side body. So eventually, the longer you're here, it's like you might start to feel that there's more space created between the bottom rib cage and the hip. And there's also space being created right around the area of the kidney and the low back. You let the breath be really smooth, nice and even. So even in length on the inhale and exhale, and even in strength on the inhale and exhale. It's kind of like a little lullaby that we can use to soothe the body. Good. Take one more moment. And then slowly release and press away. Take the counter and you can feel there's a little bit of compression there in the low back of the kidney. You even take that hand and bring it across the body.
Good. And then find just a neutral position and just switch. So you don't want to be too close. Sometimes I see people too close. Sometimes I see people way too far. It's like the Goldilocks. You've got to be like just the right length so you can like really let the weight of the body sink down and let the hand rest and sort of feel like we also get the opening between the ribs. So like in the intercostal muscles as well as in like the side body and in the low back around the kidney. And the kidney's paired organ is the urinary bladder, and that energy line or meridian begins along the inner eyes and goes up the forehead and through the brain and down the back body. It goes on either side of the spine and through the organs, the kidneys, and it ends at the little toe. And so you can kind of feel like you can light up the whole back body with your breath. Right above the kidneys are the adrenal glands. I always think of them as like a little backpack. And they sit right on top of the kidneys. And those are the glands that are responsible for our stress response in the body. They secrete the hormones, cortisol. And then sometimes when we're overstressed, the adrenals get overtaxed. And so when we dive into the kidneys, we also help to nourish the adrenals. Good. On your next inhale, just take that little bit of counter stretch. You'll feel that compression. Good. And then release. Okay. So from here, I'm going to have you come onto your belly. And I'm just coming this way so I can put my forearms on my blanket. If you want a little bit more, you can put your forearms on a block. I let my hands like visit each other so they kind of rest on each other in prayer. Make sure your elbows are a little forward of your armpit because sometimes like if your arms are too far back, it's like too taxing for your upper body. So you could even like wiggle your hips back a little bit. For just a moment, press down into the forearms, really draw the shoulders out of the ears. Elongate your spine. You can even look forward. And then just with like a long neck, you can let the chin soften. And so just getting that little bit of compression in the low back, right for the kidneys and the urinary bladder. And take a few moments here to like really start to tap into a deeper breath. You may even think about when you inhale, think about the breath traveling really from the crown of the head all the way down the back body to the pinky toes. And then when you exhale, send the breath back from the pinky toes back to the crown of the head and then over the top of the head, right to the corners of the eyes. And just follow that line with your mind's eye and the breath up and down the body. Good. You can stay just like this. And for just a moment, if you want a little more compression, you can just let your body come down. Put your hands like outside, kind of like flippers, and then lift up here. It's called seal pose. There's a lot more compression. You might stay for a moment or two and then come back to where we were. Either way, we won't be here long, but just getting that extra little bit of stimulation.
Good. Let's take one more breath. And then slowly you can begin to press yourself more towards all fours. And we'll come back into child pose. I'm going to just bring my blanket with me and kind of double it up enough so that I can let my forehead rest on the blanket and hands by the sides. Good. So I want to offer up rabbit pose. So some of you might just feel really good staying here and like, this is enough. But rabbit pose, if you're coming in with me, lift up enough that you can walk your knees together and just move your blanket to the side. Come back down and take your hands on your heels. You're going to start off on your forehead. And first, just let your shoulders kind of round and drop down. So on the forehead, take a breath here. You could even stay here nice and compact or start to lift your hips. And as you do that, you're going to elongate the spine. So you have to send the crown of the head a little further forward. So the crown of the head is down. We're rounding the spine like cat. Hands and heels stay together. Provide that like little counterpoint for you to really round your spine. Breathe fully. Shoulders stay out of the ears. You might even open the mouth for the breath out. Last breath. Good. Slowly release your hips. Stretch your arms forward from the kidneys all the way to the palms. Stretch long. Good. Take one more breath from the kidneys to the palms. And then as you exhale, find downward facing dog. So, take the time you need to arrange the hands and feet. Just for this version, I'm going to let my torso be fairly heavy and weighty. So I don't want you to let it go past your armpits necessarily. So think about ice cream scooping the armpits, lifting the arm bones, and letting the sit bones lift up as the arm bones lengthen down towards the floor. And breathe thoroughly and specifically into the low back. Relax your head and neck as much as you can. One more breath. Good. Slowly come onto the knees. And come back into child's pose. You can choose knees together, knees a little further, or knees nice and wide. You also choose whether hands and arms are by the body or they're stretched forward. Okay, slowly release. Come on up to a seat and just go ahead and position your blanket as a pillow at the top of your mat. And one last thing here, this is one of my favorite twists. It's like very elegant. It's Bharar Vajrasana. So sitting on your heels, tops of feet down, take a full breath. And then really simply, you're just like, I'll usually put my right hand down, just kind of shift your hips to the right. So your left knee is probably a little bit forward of the right, and your feet are kind of stacked. Good. So roll your shoulders open back, plant your right hand, take your left hand and just scoop it underneath that leg and take the twist. Receiving just a healthy amount of compression here on the right side kidney. One last breath. Good. Release.
And then coming to the other side, so come back to neutral. And then there's just that little shift left. And as you drop left, your feet kind of will stack. Left hand plants, right hand scoops under. So I'm actually taking my left hand, walking it a little further back. You still want to keep the spine nice and tall here. Sorry, I got a cramp in my foot. Good, tall spine, open chest. Last breath. And slowly release. All right, so now that we're kind of shifted to the left, put your left hand down and take that leg, right leg, put it on the floor, and then realign your hips a little bit. So we've got the left knee bent, the right foot on the floor. One more forward fold with an option to bind if you'd like. Put your left hand down, hinge forward, and you can just slice that arm across and let the head rest. If you want, find the bind. So take that hand, so we kind of like slice it across and internally rotate so the palm is up, bend the elbow, take the hand behind, then you can get that bind. Once you have that bind, the forward fold becomes pretty accessible here, depending really on your body, but go with what feels good to you. You know, come back to that still deep place within. You can think about the kidneys kind of like as a well in the body, the depth, the watery element, how it houses our essence. Good, and then slowly release. Come on up and out. And then let's just come to the other side. So the right knee bends, the left foot's on the floor. Realign your hips a little bit. So you'll know that like the right sit bone is up. You know, let it be that way for a moment and probably for the duration of the pose. Use your, did I say right? Your left sit bone is up. I'm mirroring. Left sit bone is up. Right hand plants, hinge forward a little bit and go to cross over. And stay for a moment. You know, sometimes it's nice to feel into the beginning of a pose before you rush to get all the way to what feels like the end. Because if you're taking the bind, like we slice across, palm faces down, and that strong internal rotation will let the palm face up. And the hand comes behind and grab. Fold as much as feels good to you. Then once you fold, like go ahead and let all that connective tissue stretch. It's like the architecture of the bones keeps us in place. And we stretch that rubber band of tendons, fascia, joints. And the kidneys actually relate to the bones, right? The most yin of the organs, and the bone marrow is related to the kidneys. Okay, slowly begin to release, come up and out, or take a little counter. And then when you are ready, come on down. Take your time, come on down. You can use your blanket as a pillow or use it as a blanket. And let your feet be mats with, maybe let the or actually first start with your legs mats with, then let your feet flop in and out a couple times. You might start Shavasana by letting the hands rest on the low belly. And take a breath or two. Let your arms rest by your sides. And I will leave you here to stay for as little or as long as you would like.